You're to wake up one morning, stretch out, sip your coffee, and realize someone's been stealing electricity straight out of your wall? No broken window. No crowbar. Just a smile. And the kind of entitlement that makes you question reality. Because that's exactly what happened to me. And let me tell you, what started as a neighborly misunderstanding turned into a full-blown suburban power war. My name's Jake. I am a systems engineer. I live in a modest two-story duplex on the edge of Cascade Ridge. I don't throw wild parties. I mow my lawn, and I pay my HOA dues on time, every time. All I wanted was a little peace, a full battery in my plug-in hybrid, and maybe a weekend off to fix the leaky shed roof. Instead, I got Karen. Now, her name's not actually Karen, but if you've lived in any neighborhood for more than 6 months, you know exactly the type I'm talking about. You know the kind. Wears yoga pants like a power suit. Treats the HOA handbook like the 10 Commandments. Thinks your property is just an extension of her kingdom. And what did Queen Karen do, you ask? She plugged her Tesla into my charger. Of my property. Without asking. Multiple times. At first I thought maybe it's a mistake. Then I caught her on camera. Then she left me a note calling me selfish. And that's when I stopped asking and started engineering. You're about to hear the story of how one woman's entitlement sparked a high-voltage neighborhood showdown, where surveillance footage, DIY tech traps, and a laminated sign with a smiley face became the ingredients for a petty, poetic kind of justice. So buckle up. This isn't just about stolen electricity. It's about boundaries. It's about consequences. And it's about what happens when you push the wrong quiet guy too far. It started with just a regular little hedge waist high, maybe 3 feet across. I trimmed it every other weekends, shaped it neat, kept it clean. It sat right next to my driveway, right where I installed my new Level 2 EV charger. Wired it myself, metered it into my panel, tucked it in like a secret. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I called it Sparky's Fuel Dock. Sparky's my car. A beat-up plug-in hybrid I got second-hand from a guy on Facebook Marketplace named, weirdly enough, Sparky. Anyway, I didn't think twice about the placement. Why would I? I live alone, I mind my business, I eat cereal for dinner, and I watch reruns of Columbo with a dog I don't even own, just one that likes to visit my porch. That's the kind of peaceful energy I'm about. Then came Karen. And no, her name's not technically Karen, but when someone treats your driveway like it's a community resource center and stares at you like you're the help, the name fits. You feel it. First time I noticed, it was just a little odd. Her pearl-white Tesla Model Y parked a tad close to my hedge. Okay, fine, we all get lazy sometimes, no big deal. Second time I saw the charging cable looped around the hedge's corner, stretched out like a sneaky little tail. Third time I was sipping coffee on my porch, right hand holding the mug, left hand scratching behind the porch dog's ears, and I watched her plug in. No knock, no ask. Just plug and play, like I was the power company and she'd finally made partner. I froze. Stared at her like I was seeing a bald eagle ride a unicycle down my sidewalk. She saw me. She smiled. Waved. I stood up, walked over, still holding my coffee, still in my slippers, and asked, "Hey, Karen, did you mean to plug into my charger? It's, not public." She blinked like I'd asked her to hand over a kidney. "Oh, honey," she said, flipping her acrylic nails at me. "We're neighbors. Sharing is part of the community spirit, right?" Community spirit. Lady, I once lent a neighbor a pressure washer and never saw it again. I'm all for kindness, but this was theft with a smile. I told her, very politely might I add, that the charger was private, installed on my own meter and not for public use. She gave me this tight, condescending grin, you know the one. The "I'm smiling but I think you're beneath me" kind of grin. Then she unplugged, tossed her hair and said, well, maybe you should have put up a sign. Like I was the problem. Listen, if this has ever happened to you, or if you've ever had a neighbor pull some out-of-pocket nonsense like this, go ahead and hit that like button, drop a comment and tell me your Karen story. And hey, subscribe if you're into tales of quiet revenge, neighborhood chaos, and justice served with a smirk. Because this was just the opening act. 2 nights later, I caught her on my security cam doing it again. And the night after that, she'd wait until I was out or asleep, like some nocturnal kilowatt raccoon. I even left a note on the charger, polite, laminated with a smiley face. But she left a note back, taped to my door, said she was disappointed in my lack of generosity and neighborly cooperation, with 2 smiley faces. Passive-aggressive emotional terrorism at its finest. At this point, I knew something had to change. Because it wasn't just about electricity anymore. It was about boundary, respect, and if I'm being honest, the principle of the damn thing. And I knew just the guy to call. Because if the HOA wouldn't stop her, I knew someone who could build a system that would. Now, you might be wondering, why not report her? Why not go full suburban Batman and bring down the hammer of justice? Oh, I did. Straight to the HOA. Because surely the same folks who once fined me for having a slightly irregular mulch border would love to handle an actual violation. So I called. Explained everything, politely, professionally. Told them about the charger, the unauthorized use, the camera footage, the notes. I even offered to email screenshots. The woman on the line, Linda, I think her name was, sounded like I had just interrupted her mid-crochet. Well, if it's happening on your private property, and it's not a structural or aesthetic concern, that's technically a personal dispute. Blinked. She's stealing power. Yes, but it's not a visual disturbance. A visual disturbance. That's what it takes to get the HOA involved. You could host a full-blown black-margin Tesla charging station in your yard as long as you keep it behind a hydrangea. I pressed. You're saying there's nothing you can do? She sighed. Unless the vehicle blocks public access or damages HOA landscaping, there's not much precedent for action. Ah, yes, because precedent is what matters when your neighbor is siphoning your electricity like a mosquito with leather seats. I eyed up, stared at the phone, then laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes the absurdity's so thick it either breaks you or becomes the best excuse to get creative. This wasn't going to be solved by rules or regulations. Not when the very people entrusted to uphold fairness were more worried about mailbox symmetry than energy theft. Oh, if I wanted justice, it wasn't going to come with a clipboard and khakis. It was going to come from me. And that's when I called Derek. Derek is what happens when you mix a hardware store, a hacker forum, and the energy of a raccoon on Mountain Dew. Me met freshman year of college. He was the guy who hacked the dorm's vending machine to deliver free soda every time someone pressed C4. The machine ended up exploding during finals week, and Derek walked away with a full scholarship to MIT, which he declined, to build things in his garage, for fun. When I told him the problem, he didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. Hey, he said, okay, you want a switch? I want a switch. How much does what? That charges my car or drains hers? And just like that, Derek smiled. Because sometimes the HOA won't defend you. But a slightly unhinged electrical genius with a soldering gun and no moral brakes? Bet guy will. Derek showed up at my place the next morning with a backpack, a soldering kit, and a grin that said, "We're gonna break a few rules, but tastefully." "All right," he said, dropping his gear on my workbench. "Walk me through your evil plan." I laid it out as simply as I could. I want a switch. Just one. Flick it one way, Sparky charges. Flick it the other. And if Karen plugs in again, she becomes the donor, he said, eyes lighting up. Oh, this is going to be fun. Now let me be clear. Derek isn't just some guy who knows electronics. Derek breathed them. He once turned a discarded air fryer into a Bluetooth speaker that also dispensed Skittles. His idea of a good time is reverse engineering smart fridges to send passive-aggressive messages to their owners. In short, he was exactly who I needed. We pulled the charger's panel apart like we were defusing a bomb. Well, he did. Byron mostly handed him tools, watched, and tried not to breathe too loudly. "There's no native bidirectional support on most EV chargers," he mumbled, half to himself, half to the humming air around him. "But there's always a workaround." That's when I realized this wasn't just a project for Derek. This was art. By the end of the day, we'd created a Frankenstein setup. A hidden garage switch toggling between charge and drain mode. A silent relay buried behind the wall panel. A decoy LED light to fake the charging glow even when it was draining. And, my favorite touch, an energy meter logging exactly how much power Karen's Tesla donated to my garage battery bank. "Oh, and I added a failsafe," Derek said. "In case she figures it out and calls someone, flip this override and the whole thing resets to normal." I looked at our creation. It didn't look like a trap. It looked clean, elegant, deceptively polite. But it was surgical justice hiding in plain sight. Then I printed a sign, laminated it, taped it right above the charger, just passive-aggressive enough to feel legal. "Private charger, do not use without permission. Unauthorized vehicles may experience unexpected results." Smiley face at the end, of course. Because nothing says "I see you" like a legally non-binding smiley. We stood back, looked at it. Derek nodded. "It's beautiful." That night, I sat on my porch, sipping coffee like a man who just booby-trapped a mousetrap with a can of Monster Energy. And sure enough, 2 nights later, she came, same car, same smug face, pulled up in the dark like some Mission Impossible villain with a Starbucks tumbler and a yoga mat. She didn't knock. She didn't read the sign. She just plugged in and leaned back in her seat like she was settling in for a spa day. And I slipped the switch. Drain mode, engaged. The fake LED blinked happily. Karen's dashboard lit up like it was Christmas morning. Meanwhile, in my garage, the hidden battery pack was quietly swallowing stolen power like a polite little vampire. 3 and 2 kilowatt hours. Plugged. Saved them. Stored. And that was just the first time. Because after that night, the game had officially changed. And in the suburbs? Petty is just another word for prepared. At the first successful drain, I slept like a king. Like because I'd hurt anyone, not even close. But because for once I wasn't helpless. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was a quiet reclaiming of power, of space, of respect. But I knew Karen wasn't going to stop. People like her never do. See, when someone's wired like that, entitled, stubborn, allergic to boundaries, every no sounds like an invitation to try harder. So I got proactive. First order of business, the sign. Remember the one? Laminated, weatherproof, printed in that perfectly passive-aggressive font that says, "I'm polite, but I will end you legally." But I wasn't done. I added a second one. This one? Straight to the charger itself, bright yellow, bold letters, and just enough technical jargon to make the average person's eyes glaze over. Caution. Experimental energy recovery system in testing. Unauthorized use may result in power loss. And yes, I added another smiley face. Because if I've learned anything from HOA meetings, it's this: if you say it nicely, it doesn't count as hostility. Then came the camera upgrade. I already had a basic motion sensor cam pointing at my driveway. But now I added a second angle, zoomed in on the charger. I wanted eye contact. The next few nights felt like a sitcom, and a spy thriller had a baby in my driveway. Saren showed up again. Plugged in. Didn't even glance at the signs. The LED glowed. The camera blinked. The system whispered, "Snack time." 3.6 kilowatt hour. Gone. It was like watching a raccoon sneak into your trash and eat kale chips, thinking they've hit the jackpot. At this point, I started keeping a log. I called it Karen's Kilowatt Contributions. I even color-coded it, because if you're going to be petty, at least be organized. But the best part? Her face. The morning after her third hit, I caught her walking back to her house with the most delightfully confused expression I've ever seen. When did my Tesla say it was charging but my range dropped? That kind of confusion, that's not anger. That's the start of doubt. And doubt is how you win. Now, if you've ever dealt with someone who refuses to respect your space, I want you to hit that like button right now and tell me in the comments, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you go full legal? Would you confront them again? Or would you let a quietly blinking LED do the talking? Because for me, this wasn't just about electricity anymore. This was chess. And Karen, she thought we were still playing checkers. The signs were up. The system was armed. And Karen was about to make her most generous donation yet. There's a certain joy that comes from watching justice unfold slowly. Not like courtroom drama justice. Not the kind with gavels and dramatic objections. No, this was a quieter kind of justice. Petty justice. Beautiful, calculated, electrified. Karen plugged in, again, fourth time now. Same stealth routine. Same smug expression. Same absolute disregard for signs, warnings, basic decency, and private property. And me? I was in my garage with a cup of mint tea, watching the camera feed like it was Sunday night football. She plugged in. I flipped the switch. Drain mode. Activated. And this time, it wasn't just for fun. This time, Derek had come back with upgrades. See, before, we were just quietly nibbling at her battery. Well, a few kilowatt hours here, a few there. Enough to confuse, not enough to enrage. Look-ins, but now we had a real-time energy meter. Every joule she lost, counted, logged, time-stamped, and displayed on a little dashboard in my garage like a school board. That night, 3.4 kilowatt-hour. At our local utility rate, that was about $1.18, which doesn't sound like much, until you remember it was stolen in reverse. You ever get a refund you didn't expect? Multiply that by petty satisfaction and add a smirk. That was me. The next morning I was already on my porch with coffee in hand, tablet open, pretending to scroll the news. Karen marched up the steps like she was storming the Bastille. "Is there something wrong with your outlet?" she snapped. I looked up, blinked innocently. "Nope, works great." "Well, my car said it was charging, but my range dropped, like it actually went down." Tar shrugged, keeping my tone breezy. "Could be the cable. Teslas are picky, right? Or maybe your battery's acting up." The silence between us was thick, the kind that carries 1,000 unsaid accusations. But here's the thing. Karen didn't want the truth. She wanted control. And when entitled people lose control, they don't apologize, they escalate. She folded her arms. "Sharing goes both ways, you know." I smiled. "So does asking permission." She huffed. That huff, the same one you hear when someone gets told they can't cut in line at Trader Joe's, and stomped back to her car like a toddler who just got told no for the first time. And yes, of course she plugged in again. That night, 3.8 kilowattage how. The system let out this soft little beep when it finished. It sounded almost like applause. I was this close to installing a little victory jingle, but it wasn't about the money. It was the principle. She had ignored signs, violated boundaries, mocked the very idea of respect. And no, she was paying me back, one stolen charge at a time. Hey, if you've ever had to get creative to defend your space, let me know in the comments. What's the most delightfully petty thing you've ever done that was completely justified? And don't forget, hit that like button if Karen's slow burn confusion is feeding your soul like it did mine. Because this was only the beginning. What happened 3 days later? That was when things got theatrical. Picture a Tesla, completely dead. Karen? Red-faced. And a flatbed truck about to make my driveway famous. 3 days later it happened. Not the draining. That had become routine by then, like brushing my teeth, or checking if Karen had donated again overnight. No, I'm talking about the moment when delusion met daylight. It was around 9 o'clock a.m. I was halfway through a bagel when I heard banging outside. Not knock and bang. Urgent. Angry. Like the door owed her money. I opened it, and there she was. Your hair slightly frizzed. Phone clenched in one hand. The pointing at me like I'd kicked her puppy. You, she shouted. Leaf standing there in pajama pants holding a butter knife, confused as all hell. Morning? You stole my electricity. I blinked. Come again? I took my car to the Tesla service center, she said, waving her phone like it was a search warrant. They said someone's been draining the battery through the charger port. I stared at her for a beat. That's Wildem, I said, deadpan. Didn't even know that was possible. Oh, don't play dumb, she hissed. I know it was you. Glance at the laminated sign still taped above the charger. Unauthorized vehicles may experience unexpected results. Well, I said, it does say unexpected. That's when she snapped. Her voice went up an octave, her hand went full jazz fingers, and she shouted, You think this is funny? And I'll be honest with you. It kinda was. But I kept a straight face. She stormed off mid-rant, yelling over her shoulder. I'm calling the police. You're gonna pay for this. Now, for most people, that'd be a moment of panic. I made a second cup of coffee. Because unlike Karen, I kept receipts. Digital, physical, emotional. And most importantly, video. 15 minutes later, a cruiser rolled up. It was Officer Daniels. Good guy, seen him at neighborhood meetings, likes fishing and hates paperwork. He stepped out, glanced between us, me calm, Karen vibrating with rage. What's going on? He asked. So I walked him through. Calmly. Clearly. Showed him the charger, the signs, the video clips of her plugging in at night without permission, ignoring warnings. Even showed him the laminated notes. I had extras. Karen, meanwhile, was pacing behind him, whisper screaming. He's lying. He's reverse hacking my car. This is ecotourism. Daniels raised an eyebrow. You installed a system that drains power from cars that plug in? Only when manually activated, I said, and only after repeated unauthorized use. With posted signage. He turned to Karen. Did you plug into his charge? She paused. That brief, golden pause where someone realizes they're seconds from self-incrimination. I thought it was public. Daniels nodded. Slowly, on private property, with warning signs and video footage of you doing it multiple times. Karen sputtered. I could see her brain short-circuiting. Daniels looked back at me. You want to press charges? I wanted to. Oh, I wanted to. But I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about court. This was about consequences. No, I said, sipping my coffee. I think the lesson's being learned. Daniels chuckled. You ever think of running for HOA president? God, no, I said. I like having a soul. He laughed, took the coffee I offered him, left with a nod. Karen? She stomped home. Again. But this time, she looked rattled. Nothing. Not outraged. Just cornered. And that night, she plugged in anyway. But here's the thing about pushing your luck too far. Eventually you run out of charge. And when the sun rose the next morning, Karen's Tesla didn't. You'd think, after getting caught by the cops, after being warned, after realizing I had everything on video, that Karen would stop. But no. Some folks don't just double down, they refinance their ego and triple down. And Karen? She wasn't just playing chicken with me anymore. She was heading toward a brick wall in a pearl-white Tesla with a full foot on the accelerator. That night, she returned, hoodie up, cable in hand, sneaking through the dark like she was on a Navy SEAL op instead of committing petty theft in yoga pants. I watched it all on camera. She glanced left, glanced right, then plugged in, right past 2 laminated warning signs and a blinking LED that screamed, bad idea. She settled into her driver's seat, tilted the chair back, got cozy, though I flipped the switch. Drain mode, engaged. This time, I didn't stop it after a few hours. I let it run all night. I wanted her to wake up to a consequence, a real one. And oh, she did. Next morning, I cracked open the garage door like I was peeking into a movie scene. Karen was still in her car, hood half up, phone in one hand, frustration pouring off her like smoke. She tried to start it. Nothing. Yet. Not low. Not glitchy. Yet. She yanked the charger cord out like it had personally betrayed her, kicked her bumper, then just stood there, fists on hips, waiting for the asphalt to swallow her. And it didn't. Instead, it handed her an audience. Bob, from 2 houses down, accidentally started watering his lawn again. At 7:30 in the morning, with a garden hose that wasn't even on. Other neighbors peeked through curtains. Phones came out. I swear someone whispered, "Is this that Tesla lady?" Then came the pièce de résistance. About 45 minutes later, a flatbed tow truck rolled up. The driver, clearly a man who'd seen too much, took one look at the situation and sighed like this was his third Karen of the day. He called out after the car had tried to shift the Tesla into neutral to winch it up. Just no shift. So Karen, Queen of Kilowatt County, did the only thing she could. She pushed all 4,416 pounds of that sad, silent Tesla down the sidewalk, 1 inch at a time, wheezing, red-faced, Crocs squeaking with every step. It was majesty. Bob just stood there, sipping coffee like it was the HBO finale of the month. I leaned against my fence, arms crossed, watching like it was the suburban Hunger Games. Eventually, she made it to her drive, collapsed on the steps like a fallen monarch. And that's when I thought, okay, surely she's learned her lesson. But I forgot who I was dealing with. Because 2 days later, I got a certified letter in my mailbox. From Karen, handwritten, in cursive, which somehow made it worse. She accused me of packing her vehicle, violating Tesla's energy sovereignty, operating an illegal power redistribution facility, and demanded I pay her exactly $372.00 in damages, a number she clearly pulled from her personal fantasy dimension. She also threatened small claims court if I didn't comply in 72 hours. Reader, I laughed. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my leftover spaghetti. But just to be thorough, I sent the letter to my friend Sarah. She's a real estate lawyer with a mean streak and a love for HOA drama. Her reply? Tell her to sue. Please, I need the entertainment. I considered ignoring it. But then I thought, nah, let's lean in. Typed my reply, double-spaced, signed in blue ink just to be classy. Dear Karen, thank you for your recent correspondence. While I appreciate your creativity, I must decline your request for payment. The system in question is clearly marked private, was accessed without permission, and triggered no less than 3 warning signs. Video footage is available. Should you pursue legal action, I'll be happy to present a full dossier to the court, including diagrams, incident logs, and witness statements. Warm regards. The guy whose charger you keep stealing from. And I sent it in the same envelope she sent me. Because when it comes to suburban warfare, sometimes the petty touches matter most. But Karen wasn't done. No, she went bigger. He took it to the HOA. And that was the moment I realized I wasn't just defending my charger anymore. I was about to win a war. So, after the cops, after the dead Tesla, after the letter that read like a lawsuit written during a wine-fueled meltdown, Karen did the one thing I didn't expect. She went full HOA. Filed an official complaint. The letter, which she tried to hand-deliver, I didn't answer the door because, boundaries, was a masterpiece of unhinged logic. His got him to say no. Violating communal harmony, operating an unlicensed energy redistribution facility, and creating a hostile environment for electric vehicle owners. I installed a charger on my own house. But her filing triggered something glorious. A mandatory HOA review hearing, which meant she had to face the board. With me in the room. I RSVP'd so fast I'm surprised the paper didn't catch fire. And I didn't come empty-handed. I walked into that HOA meeting like I was defending a PhD dissertation in petty engineering. Button-down shirt, neutral smile, and in my hands, a printed presentation packet, color-coded, indexed, and stapled. Inside, time-stamped footage stills, diagrams of my charger setup, energy logs labeled unauthorized charging sessions by one entitled neighbor. And yes, a slideshow. I made a slideshow. Karen, on the other hand, walked in with a crumpled HOA handbook, a highlighter, and the energy of a Real Housewives reunion guest who showed up uninvited. The board members were already seated, half bored, half caffeinated, and all quietly bracing for drama. Karen went first. She launched into a passionate monologue about sustainability, neighborhood values, and how she was being persecuted for trying to save the planet. She waved the HOA rules around like they were the Constitution, highlighting random sentences like, "All members shall strive to promote community harmony and mutual respect." I almost choked on my compliment. Then it was my turn. I handed each board member my packet. Quick, the projector remote. Slide 1. The charging station. A timeline of unauthorized use. Slide 2. Signs, surveillance, and civil disobedience. Slide 3. A close-up of Karen's note taped to my door with the words, "Disappointed in your lack of generosity." It ended with the audio clip from my security cam. Karen's voice, crystal clear, screeching, "You're sucking my Tesla dry." The room went dead silent. Yeah, that Bob from across the street, who I'd now learned was on the HOA board, tried to suppress a snort. Failed. Coughed to cover it. Karen turned red. Not mad red. That tightly, soul leaving the body red. The board thanked us both. Said they'd deliberate. Meeting adjourned. I walked out calm. Gone fit. Like I'd just aced an exam where the only question was, how do you humble a bully with bullet points? 3 days later I got the result. Decision, no action. Private property. Clear signage. Unsubstantiated complaint. Applicator. They added a note. Please consider relocating your charger slightly further from the sidewalk for visibility clarity. Also, thank you for your detailed and professional presentation. That's right. Not only did the HOA thanked me for the PowerPoint. If you've ever faced off with someone who thought rules were only for other people, go ahead and smash that like button and let me know in the comments, what's the pettiest battle you've ever won with dignity? Because for me, this was the beginning of the end. Karen stopped plugging in after that. But not because she understood. She just ran out of moves. And I had one last surprise waiting. You'd think that after the HOA meeting, after the public exposure, after the dead Tesla tow truck parade, Karen would have moved on. And in a way, she did. She never tried to plug in again. Never looked me in the eye. Never mentioned community spirit or energy sharing ever again. Instead, she ran a sad little extension cord from her garage window across her yard to charge her car. And every time I saw it, limp-sagging like a tail between the legs, I smiled. Because sometimes justice isn't loud. It's quiet. It hums like a charger behind a hedge, powered by principle and petty engineering. Fine for his employees and his country. But that came the following weekend. Derek showed up again, unannounced as usual, carrying something wrapped in a beach towel. "Got something for you," he said. I unwrapped it slowly. It was a trophy. Oh, seriously. A full-on 3D printed LED-lit glorious piece of suburban art. On the base, a mock Tesla charging port. Inside the clear casing, a miniature battery bank. Above it, a glowing display that read, "Energy restored. 21.6K. Courtesy of Karen." It's even had a fake Tesla logo on top, just for flavor. He'd wired it so the light pulsed every time I flipped the garage switch. I mounted it right next to the breaker panel, my own little hall of justice. And every time it lit up, it reminded me, boundaries matter, even if you have to electrify them. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about self-respect. It was about drawing a line and saying, not this time, not again. Look, I'm not saying everyone needs a Derek or a custom-built vampire charger. But sometimes, standing up for yourself doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's just a laminated sign. HOA Karen, a silent switch and the will to flip it. If you've ever had a neighbor like Karen, someone who mistook kindness for weakness, drop a emoji in the comments. I want to know I'm not the only one who's turned their garage into a resistance base. And if you're still waiting for your moment, don't worry. Sometimes the best revenge is outlasting them. One charger, one neighbor, and a legacy of mild-mannered resistance. Stick with me one more minute, because what this whole thing taught me, it goes way deeper than electricity. It's been a few weeks now. Karen still lives down the street. She still drives her Tesla, still waves at the HOA board like she's running for office no one asked for. But she's different now. Quieter, measured. She doesn't look at my house when she walks by. And when she charges, it's with that sad little extension cord through her window like an apology trailing behind an electric car. We haven't touched the switch in days. But the trap? It's still here. Tucked behind the head. Wired and waiting. Faded sign still posted. Bed still glowing like a little suburban lighthouse warning entitled ships, don't dock here. Because the truth is, it was never just about kilowatts. It was about boundaries. See, some people don't respect lines until they get zapped by one. They think kindness is currency. And if you don't spend it freely, you're selfish. But here's the thing no one tells you growing up. It's not selfish to protect your peace. It's not petty to draw a line in your driveway and say, this is mine. In fact, sometimes the strongest thing you can do is, quietly, hold your ground. We live in a world where people like Karen get loud. They stump. They assume. They take. But we also live in a world where quiet people, we adapt, we build systems, we wire backup planes, and we sip coffee on the porch, calm as ever, while chaos burns out on our property line. So yeah, the trap remains. Not because I'm expecting another attack, but because it's mine. My charger, my space, my story. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, besides how to wire a silent energy siphon with a fake LED, it's this. Z's boundaries are the best battery backup. They keep the lights on when people try to dim you. And the moment you start honoring your space, the world starts respecting it too. So whether you're battling a Karen, a Kevin, or just the creeping feeling that you're always giving more than you get, remember this. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to protect what's yours. And you're allowed to build exactly what you need to keep the lights on in your house and in your heart. Thanks for sticking around with me. If this story charged you up, hit that like button. Drop your wild neighbor tale in the comments. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because around here, we believe in justice, in engineering, and in the power of a well-placed laminated sign. Until next time, stay grounded, stay bright, and keep the switch ready.